All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to another Majors and Quinn online event. Thank you so much for showing up and joining us this evening. And even if you're viewing this in the future, thank you for clicking on and partaking of our content. As an independent bookseller here in Minneapolis, we really cannot do what we do without the constant support of folks like you who participate in the commerce that happens in our store, and just by showing up and watching, liking, sharing our videos and getting the word out about what we do here in Uptown. So I just, from everyone here, I want to go ahead and extend a thank you to you for being here and being part of our community. On that, I will be posting every now and then a link to the book to our website. So if you are interested in purchasing a copy of the book, and would like to, tonight, you can certainly order there. You can also do that over the phone. You can find our phone number on our website. Yeah, I think that's about it. Oh, if you have any questions or comments or anything, let us know where you're coming in from. If you want to type in a comment or a question for our author, we will be taking crowdsourced questions toward the end. So please, if you think of anything, please go ahead and type that in and we will get to it as soon as we can. And yeah, I think without further ado, let me introduce tonight's featured author. Dawn M. Barclay is an award-winning author who has spent a more than 30-year career working in different aspects of the travel industry. After attending Tufts University, she worked in sales, marketing, and management for her parents' firms, Barclay Travel Ltd. And Barclay International Group Short-Term Apartment Rentals. Next, she branched out into travel trade reporting with senior or contributing editor positions at Travel Agent Magazine, Travel Life, Travel Market Report, and most recently, Insider Travel Report. Dawn holds degrees in psychology and marketing, is a mother of two, and resides in New York's scenic Hudson Valley. She also writes fiction as DM Barr and holds leadership roles in several writer organizations. She is available for speaking engagements and delights in hearing from her readers. So everyone join me in welcoming Dawn Barclay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing tonight?
Wonderful. I'm just so excited to be back in Minneapolis.
Fantastic.
Virtually.
Well,
I was
welcome.
just there a month ago for BoucherCon.
How's the weather treating you? It's a little cold on my end.
Yeah, it's about anywhere from 45 in the morning to 70 by the afternoon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So I think without further ado, I'll hop into some questions for you.
Great.
Or do you want to talk about the book a little bit before we get into it? Like maybe explain the concept of the book and...
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is a book I've been working on since the early 2000s, and it is about traveling with children with invisible disabilities such as autism, ADHD, bipolar syndrome, borderline personality disorder. The surprising part of it is that the special needs travel tips can work for any family. And what I'll be discussing are all great ideas to bring up to any child, because any child who is removed from their comfort zone becomes anxious and inflexible, which is where I got the title for the book. And because children sort of cling to routine, and travel is anything but routine. So it can never hurt to preview as much of a trip for a child as possible. And that's why it works for everyone.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a terribly necessary book that we don't really consider the true importance of, in terms of just like how broad that subject can matter to a family. Because as you said, taking a child out of their comfort zone can lead to anxiety, and any child can have a reaction that is adverse, and we don't necessarily want to think about what happens in those moments, but it's entirely necessary to consider those things before you get there.
Yeah.
So I guess first question, what made you, what was the impetus for writing this book?
Well, back in the early 2000s, when I needed a book like this, it did not exist. I grew up in a travel family, as you described in your introduction. I've been traveling all my life. When I had children, they were not as excited about travel as I was, and I had no desire to not travel. And I just couldn't. They were anxious and inflexible and had issues with transitions and had sensory issues. And I went looking around to find some answers. I grew up believing that there's a book as a bookstore, you should appreciate it. I believe there should be a book for everything. You know,
Mhm.
when I got pregnant, I decided, well, no problem. I'll read a book about how to have a child, a book about how to raise a child. And unfortunately, there were no books out that could talk about how to travel with children who are having sensory meltdowns, and how to get through a dinner when the child is screaming in the middle of the
Mhm.
restaurant. And so I started doing some interviews. I spoke to Dr. Tony Atwood, who's very large in autism circles. I spoke to Dr. Ellen Littman, who's very large in ADHD circles. And then I kind of hit a wall because there was not that much information out there at the time through the internet as there is now. And you
Mhm.
can't exactly stand on a street corner and yell, "Who has autism and wants to talk to me?" About your
Mhm.
travel problems. So it was not until I became aware of a designation called the Certified Autism Travel Professional designation that's offered by a group called IBCCES that I knew exactly how to write the book. I interviewed those very generous and well-skilled people, many of whom are special needs parents themselves, and they introduced me to their clients. And by 2019, there was a lot more information on the internet that I could
Mhm.
follow up with and interview those uh, people who were quoted. And then we had a little pandemic that left me with 2 years with nothing to do. And I'm
Mhm.
not very good with nothing to do. So I wrote 4 books during the
My
pandemic.
goodness.
Yeah. So, well, one anthology that I edited, 2 fiction books, and I finally finished this book.
Wow. Prolific.
Yeah.
So you mentioned interviewing people. How many people exactly did you interview for this?
Over 100. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
huge commitment. And are the interviews contained within the book, or do you pull quotes from that? Or
Um, they are, well, I pull quotes. What I did was I took the interviews and I divided them up into different subject matter. So the way the book is laid out is there's an introduction that talks about much of what I'll talk about today, starting small, introducing the concept of travel, how to create a child-centric vacation. And then I get into what I consider an organized way of dealing with the book is how do you get there? How do you decide where you're going to go? How do
Mhm.
you get there, whether it's air, cruise, train, car, whatever, bus? And then next part is where do you stay, whether it's a hotel, a houseboat, a dude ranch, a vacation rental.
Mhm.
And then the next part is once you're there, you have to leave the hotel or vacation rental sometime. What are you going to do? So there's a lot of information on touring and special interest travel, such as children's museums and theme parks and things like that. And then there's a resource section at the end.
Great. Yeah, that was actually another thing that I was going to ask you about. Any possible resources, but you already answered it. It's all in the book.
Yeah, everybody I interviewed has a bio in the book. And
Great.
then I do talk about organizations like if you've just had your child diagnosed, who you can turn to. So there are a lot of organizations either for autism or ADHD or what have you. Yeah, which I just wanted to be as helpful as possible. And then there's like a really long biography, bibliography. It's like 9 pages long.
Yeah, so I suppose this, not to say that it's not explicitly a travel book, but you could say it's more, it's not like a catch-all, but like it's got a lot more to it than just explicitly travel tips.
Oh, it's more like a parenting book than a travel book
I
because
know.
really, I would say that 85% of the book are strategies of how to travel with children and in different situations, including the quotes that I got from the people I interviewed and their anecdotes. And then maybe 15% are the locations that are maybe certified or autism friendly or what have you. But the idea of the book was really to be able to travel anywhere, whether the place is autism friendly or not, using the tips. So you never get to the point where your child has a meltdown.
Right. Prevention as opposed to damage control.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So would you say then, when we shelve the book, should we put that in parenting?
Oh, I think it should be in every section.
Perfect. I will
Just
let my
line the
managers
walls,
know.
line the walls with it. Honestly, I think it should be in parenting and travel.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let somebody know.
Yeah.
Because I think right now we have it in our psychology autism section, but
yeah, well, that's
if it's coming straight from the source.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. But you know, I'd also put a copy in parenting, and I'd also put a copy in travel.
I mean, it's a sign of a well thought out book and can fit anywhere.
Can you tell that I'm involved in marketing?
Spanning those horizons bit by bit.
Sell. Yeah.
So I suppose next question. What do you think keeps special needs parents from traveling?
You know, that's a great question. And there was a study done in 2018 by IBCCES, which stands for the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards. And they interviewed 1,000 special needs parents and asked them about their travel habits. And sadly, 87% of those interviewed said they wouldn't travel at all. But of that 87%, 93% said they would if they knew where to go and what to do, and if they knew that they'd be well taken care of by people who were skilled in what they needed. Mm-hmm. Now, as an update, in 2022, they did another survey to update those results. And the great thing is that that number, 87%, went down to 78%. So that has to do with, I think, would be your next question, is about what's changed in the industry. So I'll hold off on that. But the number of parents that would consider traveling went up to 94% if somebody knew what to do for them. What I also found in my own interviews is that what keeps people from traveling is they're really worried about what people are going to think if their child has a sensory meltdown. You know, are they going to think I'm a bad parent? Are they going to think my child's a brat? There seems to be a lot of worry about that. And I find that incredibly sad, because in my world, in my view, there are two types of people in the world: people who know you and people who don't. Mm-hmm. People who know you are going to understand and be empathetic and be on your side. People who don't know you, you're never going to see again. So why are you worrying about what they think?
Right.
Go out and enjoy the world. You know, the world is waiting for you, and you're as entitled to explore it as anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus beyond that, like, what is it their business?
Right. But people get so tied up in what people are going to think of them.
Right.
And, my mom was somebody who made me grow up thinking, don't care what anybody thinks. She was a little eccentric anyway. So I never care.
Well, as somebody on the other end of that is easier said than done.
I know. And it's easier for me to say it at this age. When I was in my 20s, perhaps I cared a little bit more.
I'll take your cue from a little bit ago.
Yeah.
So what, in your opinion, has changed within the travel industry in the last 10 years or so since you started writing the book?
Yeah. So groups like IBCCES and some others, such as CAN, which is the Champion Autism Network, Sensory City, Culture City. There is even Autism Speaks is starting to get involved in this as well. Started training for sensory awareness, and IBCCES has a designation called the Certified Autism Center, as well as their certified autism travel professional that I mentioned earlier. The travel agents can take that set of classes to be better prepared to help this population. But there are hotels and theme parks and even tourist boards that are taking the training to becoming certified autism centers, and learn what they have to do to be helpful to the population, learn how to set up correct signage, mm-hmm. so that people know perhaps what the smell's going to be like at SeaWorld past a certain point, so they can make the decision if they want to feed the seals or not, because their child may not be able to deal with the smell.
Right.
There are now maps that indicate low sensory areas where children can decompress and take a break. And there are cards like the IAC, which is IBCCES's accessibility card that you can show to get to the front of the line, or whatever privileges are offered at a particular venue. So all these are described in the book, but there's definite training that's involved now. And they're, like I said, the tourist boards are making entire cities autism friendly. So you've got Mesa, Arizona, where the tourist board got in on the act, got certified, and then got a large number of venues, whether they are attractions or hotels or what have you, are autism friendly. So no matter where you go, you can pretty much feel like you'll be welcomed and the people will know how to work with you. And the Azalea, California is doing that. I'm doing a series of articles coming up on my blog, which is travelingdifferent.com, and they'll also appear in Insider Travel Report, which will talk about which cities are getting in on the act and what they're offering. So that will be helpful.
Well, great. I mean, this all sounds like terribly necessary work. But on that, if anyone who is watching right now is at somewhere that could use a bit of training like this, is there any particular organizations that you would recommend going through to receive this training?
You mean travel agents or hotels?
Hotels, like anyone in the travel industry?
Yeah, they should go to IBCCES if they want to be certified autism centers. They can also go to Champion Autism Network, which also trains, and again, Culture City, Sensory City, all of these organizations do training. What you have to be careful about, and I warn people in my book, when I do list destinations, I either have CAC after them in parentheses, which means Certified Autism Center, or I have AF, which means autism friendly. Now, autism friendly can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. If those people have been trained by one of the organizations that I've mentioned, that's great, because then there's a standard of training. But anybody can go and just say, oh, we're autism friendly, without really understanding what that is. So what I urge parents to do is contact whatever venue they're planning to either visit or stay at, if it's a hotel or a vacation rental, and ask what the designation means, how they got it, who trained them, what they offer, to make sure that, since every child on the spectrum is different, make sure that what is offered is right for your child. And also make sure that it's going to be offered when you're going to be there, because there are some museums, for example, that might have one low sensory afternoon a month, and it might not be the Saturday that you're in town. So you really want to double check all the information I offer, because things change. I mean, even venues close or move. I don't want to have you show up at the trip and find it's not there anymore. So really, you're going to do a lot of planning for this trip, which is a lot of what my book is about. Be sure to call every place that you're going to visit and make sure of what's offered there, that it's still there.
Assume nothing.
That's right. Because I mean, a lot of this book was written a year and a half ago. You know, there's a long period of trying to get the book sold. And then there's a long period of getting it edited. And then it's, has to get printed. It's a long time. And that's why I'm writing the blog, because I update the book there. And if there are any changes, I try to put them on there to, if anybody buys the book, they should also check out the website to make sure of any changes or new original content.
Gotcha. So I suppose next question, how can you best introduce the concept of travel to young children?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So children know nothing of what's going to happen. I mean, you've got children who might be 2 or 3 that you're traveling with. They might be 5 or 6 in the last 2 years. You haven't gone anywhere and they've forgotten. So, you're going to want to introduce the concept. This can be done by either getting picture books with your child's favorite characters and travel situations. And you can certainly go to your bookstore, and I'm sure you have a good children's section, or speak to your local librarian. And I do list some in the book. You're going to want to use the wonderful advent of technology to be able to preview every aspect of your trip via video, either on YouTube or from the travel supplier. So you can really look at the airport. You can look at the plane. You can look at the hotel, either outside, check in, the rooms. You can preview that whole trip. I have one gentleman who's interviewed in the book who previewed every ride at a theme park to decide ahead of time whether they were going to deal with that ride or not. You're going to want to really explain what's going to happen on a trip. And you're never going to want to spring the idea of a vacation on the kid the day before you're leaving. I mean, you really want a lot of preparation here. So again, role play is another option. Visual schedules, so you can lie out what's going to happen. And if the child isn't verbal, you can show pictures of what's going to happen. And something that I call mini experiences as well. So before you go on a camping trip, why not set out a tent in your backyard? If you're going to go to a hotel and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on a hotel stay, maybe stay a night at a friend's house or a relative's house. So the child can have the experience of sleeping in a room that's not their own. But more importantly, you're going to see where the triggers lie. So can that child get by without the sheets and blankets from home that have familiar smells and textures? Same thing with toiletries. They're used to a certain smell and texture. Do they need a nightlight? Do they need a fan to block out the sound from the hallway? All these things are going to come up, and it's nice to figure out what they're going to be when it's free than when you're on the road and there's a lot more pressure.
Right.
And so again, before you take a cruise, maybe take a ferry ride. Before you take a long train ride, maybe take a commuter train ride, for 40 minutes. You can preview airports through organizations like the ARC, because they have a program called Wings for Autism, and that lets you have a dress rehearsal of what the airport is going to be like from arrival through getting on the plane, and especially getting through security is a big issue. So, and some airlines even run tours as well. And your certified autism travel professional can organize all that for you, and they know which airports have sensory rooms and which have service animals. For me, I don't like flying, but if I know a dog's going to be at the airport, I'm going to be a lot happier about going to the airport because I can play with the dog. So these are all different experiences that you can have, or knowledge that you can have in advance to prepare the child.
I mean, this just seems like one big exercise in learning exactly how to love your child and provide for them the experience that they require in order to have a good time.
Yes.
And just like meeting them where they're at.
Yes. And getting their buy-in as well. If we talk a little bit later about building a child-centric vacation, I'll go into how you should take the child into account when you're making your plans.
Yeah. So you spoke about like preparing your child for the trip.
Yeah.
What would you say are like the best few ways to prepare a child for a trip?
Well, first of all, you're always going to want to travel with your go-to bag. And in that bag are going to be the things that your child is going to need to keep busy on, say, long plane trips or long train trips. So you're going to have your noise canceling headphones, which you should have no matter where you go. You're going to have electronics filled with their favorite TV shows and movies and music. Anything that's going to keep them busy. And your child. So whether it's coloring books or silly putty or whatever they need, fidget toys, you're going to have that all at the ready, along with snacks. And I suggest having little boxes that the child doesn't know what's inside, that should you encounter delays on the tarmac, every half hour they get a present and a surprise, because then they're kind of rooting for the delay. And why not get them on the side of hoping for that?
I might just do that for myself. That sounds lovely.
I'm big in bribery. I'm big into bribery.
Oh, goodness.
So, so that's some of what you can do. I also, think through the trip from beginning to end. So we're talking about preparation, right? Top ways to prepare. Well, one thing to do is, your child. Does your child not like crowds? Because if your child doesn't like crowds and what comes with them, which can be unfamiliar smells and a lot of people nearby and people possibly touching them, or whatever your child's issue is. Maybe when you get to your destination, instead of taking the free shuttle that's going to be filled with people, you get a rental car, or you rent an Uber, or whatever you do, because then you're really anticipating where the triggers are going to lie and sidestepping them. Right. So another idea is that if you're going to the beach for the first time, your child doesn't know what sand feels like, and you're going to kind of want to introduce that in advance. So you can go to a craft store locally, get some tarp, get some sand, lie it on the tarp, have the child walk through it so they can anticipate what's going to happen. Because you don't want to lose time on your vacation introducing these experiences. If your child lives in Florida and you're going to Alaska, maybe you want to practice wearing layered clothing or heavier coats, even inside for short periods, so that the child knows what's going to happen and has experienced it already. So things like that, really thinking the trip through. I had one woman interviewed in the book who was going on a trip where there was a suspension bridge, and they weren't sure if that child was going to be able to cross that suspension bridge. So what they did was she spoke to the tour operator, and they arranged to have somebody with a golf cart there, so that should he not be able to cross, they would cross, and the child would be taken by golf cart and met with them at a later point. It turned out it wasn't necessary. The child was fine, but you know what? It was smart to think about it in advance.
Right. Again, preparing before something bad happens. And it's really just ensuring that the child in this circumstance just has a good time and doesn't get to the point of emotional breakdown.
You want to build memories, and so you're trying to do that's the whole point of the trip anyway, to introduce the child to the world, make them a global citizen, create bonds and memories, and you want to do everything you can to make that, facilitate that.
Awesome. You mentioned earlier about creating like a child-centric trip. Can you talk more on that?
Yes. So it's their trip, not yours, for the reasons that I just gave. So you're going to want to consider pacing. What can the child do? What are they capable of doing? You may want to, instead of trying to cram 5 or 6 stops into a trip in the morning, 1 or 2, and then spend the afternoon in front of the TV or by the pool. And I know that's not the trip you were hoping for. And you're like, Dawn, I spent thousands of dollars to go to Paris, and we want to go to the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe and everything. I said, yeah, 1 a day, and then go to the pool or go to watch TV, because a crying, screaming child is not the memory you want to have.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah. And if you've ever carried a 9-year-old on your back through the streets of Paris, you're going to know why you want to why you would want to pace it to what they need. Now, another idea about creating a child-centric holiday is to perhaps vet 2 or 3 destinations. So you and your partner have decided what will work. Then get the child's buy-in on which one he or she wants to go on. Because suddenly the child's got some purchase, she's got some skin in the game, has a vested interest in the success of the trip because they help plan it. And you can also do that for daily activities. Have the child pick, what they want to do, and be sure to have a plan B and plan C, because something might be closed or the weather might not cooperate, but your child should have a say in some of that. Of course, make sure that everything's approved by you first before you get the child's buy-in, because you don't want there to be any wrong answers. Also, if your child has special interests, and a large, like up to 91% of children on the spectrum have, very specific circumscribed interests that they talk about all the time and might spend, 26 hours a week obsessing about, like trains or trolley cars or dinosaurs or whatever it is. Why not build the trip around that?
Exactly.
Because, if you have a child who loves dinosaurs, why not go to Wyoming, where you can see a bunch of museums, or go to a place where there might be a natural history museum and make it one of the stops of the trip, because when the child has that to look forward to, it's going to make the more mundane parts of the trip easier to handle because they have something that's just for them.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's such a loving way to look at it, and a very caring way to go about interacting with any child, really.
Yeah.
So how can you keep children safe when traveling? Like once you're there, and I guess mid travel as well.
Yes, absolutely. So I think a really great idea is sewing a GPS into their clothing, making sure that your name and address is in their pockets and your phone number.
Mm-hmm.
You can write your name and the number you can be reached at on their arm and cover it with liquid bandage. So if the child sweats or if there's rain, it doesn't get removed. I would also take pictures of the children every morning in the clothes they're wearing that day, so that if they do run off or they get lost, it's easier to identify them.
Mm-hmm. And would also imagine having the itinerary already ready to go would also be another, like, just layer of security on top of that. Like these are the places that we have been, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are other tips in the book, depending on, you pretty much don't want to go to a campground with a lake if your child can't swim.
Right.
Things like that. So.
Cool. So what would you say are some suggestions for travel when one child is neurodiverse and the other is neurotypical?
Yeah, also good question. If you go on large resorts that have been become certified autism centers, such as Sandals in beaches, I'm sorry, not Sandals. Sandals owns beaches. So beaches in Turks and Caicos and in Jamaica are excellent resorts. They're actually the only advanced certified autism centers. So they've gone above and beyond to make their that population comfortable, and they've been all trained on like the kids clubs are set up for both neurotypical and neurodiverse children. When your children are in the kids clubs, that gives you some time alone with your partner, which is always nice. Mm-hmm. And there's enough to do that if there's a neurotypical child, they can go to the kids club or do other things around the resort as well. The same thing on cruises. The major cruise lines have all had the training to take care of children on the spectrum. Royal Caribbean was a leader in this, and then others followed suit. So again, they have kids clubs. Royal Caribbean has an autism television channel. I mean, they had a toy lending program, which I don't know if they still do since COVID, because the last I spoke to them, they hadn't made a decision on that. Mm-hmm. But there's also an organization called Autism on the Seas, which puts together group cruises for people on the spectrum, as well as helps individual cruisers as well handle things like the life the muster drill, which is when you have your life preservers and you have to practice going to your station where you're going to get on your lifeboats. Mm-hmm. And that is also very chaotic. And I wouldn't want to take a child on the spectrum through that. So they can help you through things like that.
Great. So where can people find more out and actually pick up the book?
Yes. So the only place they can get it is your bookstore, Majors and Quinn.
You cornered the market, everyone.
That's
Don't even think about it.
It's only there. If you go to travelingdifferent.com, and again, that's with one L, traveling. If you go there, I have a list of places that you can click on to order the book. I do recommend people go to independent bookstores such as yours. Any bookstore, you can go in and order it. It may not be on the shelves, but you can certainly order it. Online distributors have it. I do periodic speaking engagements where I sell the book. And if you go to travelingdifferent.com, you can see my blog, which has ongoing original content and updates for the book. And other, like how to book me if you want me to speak, what to do if you want me to shut up. My husband's been looking for that.
There's a whole ritual.
I'm hiding it from him.
Hope he's not watching.
No, of course not. He's heard all this. He's done. yeah, that's where they could go to travelingdifferent.com and all the information will be there.
Awesome. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your other writing as well, because I understand that you have some fiction as well. Can you tell me a little
I
bit about that?
do. I write as DM Bar. I write psychological thrillers such as Expired Listings, which was a book about a town where all the realtors are getting murdered and no one cares because all the public think it's a public service. So a little bit of a satire.
Mm-hmm.
And as a realtor, because I do sell real estate too, I felt like I could say that.
Mm-hmm.
Or another book is Murder Worth the Wait, which is attack on the diet industry. So that was fun to write, very cathartic. So I'm a yo-yo dieter. So it's very cathartic to kill off people in the diet industry. And my most popular thriller was or is Saving Grace, a psychological thriller, which is about a woman who has been diagnosed as paranoid all her life, and she takes herself off her drugs and comes to believe that when her father, who's a billionaire, dies, her husband's going to kill her for the inheritance. So she has to find a creative and subtle way to save herself, because what if it's the paranoia talking? Mm-hmm. So that book's done very well for me. And I have also romantic suspense, and I have one rom-com women's fiction called Queen of Second Chances. So I'm working on a thriller now. One day I'll write more than 900 words in it. I'm so busy with promo for this book. It's hard to find time, but I am writing it in my head.
I mean, if you'd like to give any kind of a shameless plug, anything that you can say.
Buy my books. Yeah, no, I mean, they're good and they're funny. Some of them are very funny. Some of them are a little kinky. Yeah, they're online. You can find them, and you can always go to a lovely independent bookstore and ask them to order them as well.
Yeah. So do you have any more nonfiction that we can expect? Anything kicking around in your head? Any more books?
I'm working on the follow-up to this book. My agent has sent the idea to the publisher. The publisher said, please send me a proposal, and I have to find time to write it. Hopefully that will be in their hands by January, and we'll see if they like the idea. I have a couple of different follow-up books to this one.
Awesome. I mean, again, it seems like a fresh, like untapped market for new material that we really should have by now. So thank you for doing that work.
Yeah, there are a lot of books out there, thank goodness, for traveling on wheelchairs, but there was nothing for traveling with invisible disabilities on a scale like this that was very comprehensive, that you could use as a checklist no matter where you were going to go. And I'm very glad that I was able to provide people with that. If people have a different view of like they've had different experiences than I've described, I would love them to write to me. My email address is in the book because to me, this is a big crowdsourcing experiment, and I would love to either write you up on my blog, or I will put you in a future edition of the book if they update the book, which would be nice. Mm-hmm. And also, if the world's opened up, or the book's opened up the world to you in any way, please write to me, because that would really be a wonderful thing to know.
Well, I mean, that pretty much does it for the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our crowd this evening?
No, I mean, I don't know what else you want me to say. What exactly are you intimating?
I don't know. This is my first time doing this.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it. No matter what they accuse me of, I didn't do it.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, it's been a pleasure with you this evening. I myself have learned a lot, and I just want to thank you again for your work on this book and putting this out and making the materials happen. And thank you for being here with us tonight. You're part of our family now. So thank you.
Thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And until next time, I I am Matthew here at Majors and Quinn, and you have yourselves a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.